Good afternoon. This week's Parsha is Parshas Korach. And we know that Korach felt that it was time. There was a jealousy component here, but his basic kavanah, says the Arizal and the Sforim, was L'Shem Shemayim. But he handled it so badly that he ended up dead together with his 250 comrades. You see, kahuna represents chesed, kindness, and Levium are gevura, din, severity. And that's why before Mashiach, that the Levium have to be machnia to chesed. That the Levium in the Bais Yaakov had to wash the hands of the kohen, had to do things in service to the kahuna and the avodah in the Bais Yaakov. Once Mashiach comes, that severity is going to be sweetened and it's going to overpower the essence of kahuna. And Korach knew this, and he wanted to bring it at that time rather than to wait for the Geula Shlema. That's why, as the Arizal says, the pasuk Tzadik Katamar Yifrach, that was from part of Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos that was said on the first Shabbos of creation, the first Shabbos. The Medrash has three opinions. Did Hashem make that parak up, that kapitel, the words of that psalm, of that Tillim? Did Adam Harishon or did the Malachim? But everyone agrees it was said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the first Shabbos of creation. And in it, one of the psukim, the word tzaddik ends with a kuf, Katamar ends with a reish, and Yifrach ends with a ches, that spells Korach. That from the first Shabbos of creation, there was a witness to the world, there was testimony said that Tzadik Katamar Yifrach, that his kavanah, Korach, Yifrach will sprout forth in the future. Yifrach is a lashon of asidus, future tense. And ochla paga, he ate it when it was not ripe. He jumped the gun and paid with his life. But the actual essence of what he wanted to do is going to end up happening after Mashiach comes. And they said so on the first Shabbos of creation, testifying and agreeing to this fact. Now, the opening word of our Sedra is Vayikach. And Rashi brings, and Meforshim discuss it, that Vayikach, he took himself out from the tzibur. In other words, when he expressed his ideas, everyone disagreed with him. And Vayikach, he separated, okay, I'll do my own thing. Now, there is a question, why is it that the 250 were killed in such a manner? In other words, why didn't they just all have sudden heart attacks? I mean, the unusual thing. So the Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Belzer, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Levrocha, said because Moshe Rabbeinu wanted that they would not be able to say that it was regular nature. This didn't show anything, that Aaron was supposed to be the Kohen Gadol and Moshe the leader, and didn't show anything. Because people have heart attacks. The fact that all 250 had a heart attack at the same time was an unbelievable coincidence, but it wasn't something that never happened in terms of death, that people die from heart attacks. So he said, Rabbi Aaron Belzer, that therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted, and Moshe asked for it, that it should be a death that there could be no question that it was a super miracle, and it was a way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to express and to be able to state his will that Aaron HaKohen is the Kohen Gadol. Earth to suddenly open up and swallow them up was like an unbelievable, strange thing. But the word Vayikach, that he took himself aside, say the Meforshim, is because what is earth? Earth are just molecules, pieces of the tiniest item of dirt, of dust put into the dirt together, and if you just pick up a little bit, it'll go like a sift through your fingers. But the fact is that it is so united that we could put a car drive over the earth and it doesn't sink in. Yet it's all made up of just little particles that if it was in your hand, it would fall through. It wouldn't stay there. So it is a cementing unity of particles that make up earth and dirt, and it becomes so solid because of the unity that we could put a tractor on top of it, we could put things that weigh a ton on top of it, and they don't sink in. But once Yisro took himself away from unity of Klal Yisrael, he was like the loosening of the earth, and that's the reason why he fell into the earth as his oynish, as his punishment, severe punishment. So said Tzaddikim and Reb Aaron of Belz. Now, we know that Korach, the Gemara says, was so rich that he was one of the 3 richest people ever to live in the past and in the future. I mean, the description of his wealth is like almost incomprehensible. The level of how much money he had and the wealth, the worth of the diamonds and emeralds and everything that he possessed. So I want to share with you a medrash in Rus. You remember 3 weeks ago we had Shavuos and we laned Rus. And the medrash says an interesting thing there. There was a man who lived with his family, and he worked, he had a small business, and suddenly there was misfortune in the business and he lost everything. So the Medrash in Rus says that he said to his wife, you know, we had enough to have basic parnasa, but now there's no parnasa. So I'm going to go out to the field, and it was, agriculture was the backbone of everything in Eretz Yisrael at that time. That's why we had so much with Trumas, Maestris, and everything else. And he went out to the field and he found somebody to work for, and he began working in the field. But the Medrash says that a few days after he came to that field, and he was putting in his time and had parnasa, basic parnasa to bring home for livelihood for the family, a man came by him that looked like a fly-by-night, like someone that was just drifting from no man's land. And he started to talk to him. So the man that we're talking about who took this job ignored him. And around an hour later, the Medrash says he came back, this vagabond, and started speaking again to him. And again, he ignored him. But on a third try, the man came back, and this other man suddenly sensed that he shouldn't just ignore him. So he stopped to listen to what he said. And the man looked at him and said, "Which would you choose if you were to become excessively wealthy, almost like Korach?" And would you like to have 6 years of tremendous wealth now, or would you rather have the last 6 years of your life, tremendous wealth? So the man understood that this wasn't just some vagabond, some guy running around. And it turned out, as the Medrash says subsequently, it was Eliyahu Hanavi. But the man answered him and said, "I have to ask my wife." And he went home and he said, "There's somebody, he must be either very spiritual or holy, I don't know who." First I ignored him, and he asked me this question: "Do you want wealth now for 6 years, or do you want wealth the last 6 years of your life?" So the wife answered and said that she wanted it now. And Eliyahu Hanavi said to him, "You want it now? It's going to be so soon that even when you walk home to get back home, you're going to become rich before you step foot into your house." So he started to walk home, and he sees his son in front of their house, and the son is digging, and lo and behold, a chest of emeralds and rubies and diamonds and cash above and beyond belief. So like Eliyahu said to him, before you step into the house, this was out in the yard before he walked into the house. And the wife said to him, "Listen, we need some basics in the house. Our beds are broken and we don't have this. So let's get some things that we need. But the rest of the money, there's so many poor in town. Let's wipe out their grocery bills. Let's wipe out their bakery bills. Let's wipe out their bills so that they can pick up their heads and enjoy a little bit of life." So this story is told in the Medrash Rus. At the end of the 6 years, Eliyahu showed up and said, "You know that next week the 6 years is up and you're going to return to a terrible poverty." So the wife told her husband when he came home and said this, "Go back to him and tell him to go to the Rabbanu Shalom, that he should take note of what we did in these 6 years with the money." And he did, and the next day Eliyahu came back to him and said the Rabbanu Shalom agreed. He stopped, I guess, for a moment or whatever they do, lamala, and you're going to be rich the rest of your lives. What does this story tell us? A person has, as we all know, no control. We've seen multimillionaires lose their pants lose everything. We've seen people that were the weakest in a classroom, that they couldn't do a math problem, and they became the biggest gevirim, the mazel. Had nothing to do with their seichel, with their ability. It's a mazel. But when a person passes the test of what he should be doing with the gashmias around him, he can break heavens and he can soar heavenward and thrive to the highest degree that heaven, even the Rebbeinu Shalom, is going to agree with him. You indeed deserve. There was only a decree you should be rich for this amount of time, or this should happen, or that it could suddenly stop and be reversed in a second, based on our mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. I always harp on how tzedakah is the only mitzvah that is, it says it's tatzil mimoves, it saves people from death. And it's mevi geula, it brings the geula to the world. It doesn't say that by Shabbos, I keep telling you, it doesn't say it by tefillin, by kashrus, by sukkah, by matzah, but by tzedakah it does. And people, when they are asked for tzedakah, someone on the street asks, you don't have a dollar bill? Give a quarter. That Rizal says that most people in the door before Mashiach, which we are here, will be Gilgulim because they didn't give tzedakah when they were asked for it, and they had to come back with the person who asked them, and they themselves who denied and turned down the giving of the tzedakah, and they're being tested once again with that neshama meeting that neshama in a physical state, in a guf, in a body. So we have to really seize opportunities. We don't know how it can turn the tide for us in our lives, in what we do and how we do it with our chesed, our tzedakah. And chesed and tzedakah are two different things. Because when somebody comes to you that you know he owns 10 apartment buildings and he's putting out his hand asking for a quarter or a dollar, obviously the person is not well. But if you give him tzedakah because he doesn't even need the money, you're doing a tremendous chesed, because someone who's so sick that owns 10 apartment buildings and is going out for every penny that he can find, there's something wrong with him. So I'm not going to harp on it, but I feel if I do from time to time, it's worthy of the time, because in people's lives, they don't know how powerful. Oilam Rabbi Shalom said 6 years, and the wife sent back a message, please go back and tell the Rabbi. Take a careful look what we did for the people of this town. And it worked. Now, I want to tell you that there was in the beginning of the Seder, it says there were 250 people, and one of them was Ben Pelis from the Shevet of Ruvain. And the Gemara tells the story. Korach had his group, and they were big tzaddikim. And the Yismach Moshe said, that's the Satmar Rebbe Zecher Tzadik Livracha, great-great-grandfather. But the dynasty of Satmar began with the Yismach Moshe, who lived around 240 years ago. More accurately, I'd say it's more like 220 years ago, but okay. And the Yismach Moshe said to his Hasidim that he was at the time of Korach, and he remembers the whole rebellion. And he wasn't with Moshe or with Korach, because they were so high and the kavanah was so big. We look at it like Korach, like the Russia. But like I told you, Arizal said the first Shabbos of creation, they said that what he wanted to do was going to end up happening. Tzadik hatamar yifrach. So one of these Yidden was owned Ben Pelis. And the Gemara says that his wife said to him, and his name was not owned, by the way. And I'll tell you why they called him. The Pasuk calls him own. Because own, Rebbitzin, or his wife, said to him, the Gemara says, what are you getting involved in this whole story? Whether Moshe Rabbeinu wins or Korach wins, you are going to remain the same nobody that you have been all of your life. So what are you getting involved? There's going to be trouble for one side. So what do you need it for? So he answered, the Gemara says, and said to her, I want to get out of it, but I already committed. And they're coming for me. So his wife gave him wine. And he was like dozing off. And from the wine, he fell asleep. And his wife went on the porch and sat on a chair. And when the Adas Korach came running around the corner to pick him up, she grabbed off her sheitel. And when these people saw a woman sitting on the porch without covered hair, they ran away. And on that, the pasuk says, Chochmas noshim bonsa beisa zu ishto shel on Ben Pelis. But the question is, why in the world does the pasuk call him On Ben Pelis? His name wasn't On. And the answer is that the word On is from the lashon of aninus. That when a person is told that lo aleinu, lo aleichem, it should never happen to any of us, that his brother or his sister or his father or his mother died and he has to bury them and then sit shiva, he's not an oval at that point. He's what's called an onain. And an onain is exempt from all the mitzvahs aseh. That means Averas, he's not allowed to go out and eat treif. The do-nots, the lavin, he's not allowed to do. But he doesn't do the positive commandments. He doesn't put on tefillin till the burial. He doesn't make any brachos. Let's say he was about to sit down and eat. He's hungry. And he got the call that one of his family that he has to, lo aleinu, sit shiva for died. He eats, but he does not make a bracha or bench or put on tefillin till the levaya, till the funeral takes place. After the nifter, the deceased, the person who died, is buried and completely taken care of, then it's restored. The question is, if the person dies and the burial is that very same day, which it says you are supposed to do, because the neshama is in tsar the minute it leaves the body, and that's why we say Tilim is the protective shield till the burial. But once the person's buried, then it's the Yehesh Rabbah, the Mishnayos, the Sudos for poor. All of that is the thing that protects and helps the Yehesh Rabbahs help and protect the nifter. But once he's buried, they become avelim. They're in avelis. They're mourners. But before they're buried, they're in aninus. So the Gemara says that the way the wife spoke to him was so severe that he couldn't come out of the depression and the dejection his whole life, till at the end of life he died. What does it tell us? His wife saved his life. She got him a little drunk and he went to lie down, and that's when they came and she pulled off her sheitel and saved his life. They didn't go to find him, they didn't go to wake him, they ran away. So she saved his life, but at the same time, she buried his spirit. And he never, the Gemara says, he never picked up his head again. Like an oinen that's befuddled. That, oh, my sister, my brother died. When he hears the news, he's so shaken up that Shitaka saved his life, but his acid tongue, her acid tongue, buried his spirit. And the lesson to us is that we have to know that sometimes something comes out of our mouths. And we think that it's, yeah, I was entitled to tell the person off, or I was entitled to correct him, or not. But how we do it can pull a person all the way down, or we can do it in a positive, wonderful way, and the person is picked up. And that's what we learned from Ben Pelis and his wife, that the Medrash, the pasuk Chochmas Nashim Bonsa Beisa, but she buried her husband. How she spoke to him and how she criticized him. What are you putting your life on the line? You're going to remain the same nobody you were before, and you'll be the same nobody after. Now, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu davened to Hashem before the earth opened up, and a real warm tefillah. Look at the psukim. Hashem, please, I'm asking you, don't let these guys have the last word. They're Rishoyim, and what they're doing is a rishis. And the Chazal Kadmoinim ask, why did Moshe have to? I mean, these were not who knows what. I mean, but they were bottom line. They knew they were going out against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, despite what they were before the whole story happened and everything. So why did Moshe have to die? He could have just said, please, let there be a Kiddush Hashem that you and what you said and what you wanted is the last word. So why all the davening? So the Meforshim answers, because if we knew the effect of davening, we wouldn't even ask this question. Davening can have such an effect in this world that it could uproot the best to oblivion, or it could bury. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid they were going to daven. And who knows from what davening is going to come out. We take the siddur, we're saying we're dreaming what we're doing, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about where we're going Shabbos, we're thinking about 100 things, but we're not thinking that we're in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who could turn over the world in a second and do what we're asking if we only have the kavanah. Look at all the sick people you're worried about. Look at all the people who have no children. Look at the people who have no parnasa. So our kavanah can be channeled in a way that it could have the most diverse effect. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu understood. what the power of davening is, and that he could make the difference in what they would do, and his davening, the way he so fervently asked, because he understood that even as Rishoyim, they could end up having the last say, because they're going to daven and they're going to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for something, and the Rachmanis, the Rachman, the level of pity and mercy comes out so full flourish when we daven sincerely and we do sincerely, that was his concern. Now, we know that after this story, again there was tummuling. And that shows you alone how the stubbornness and the unwillingness to take a moment to realize what's happening to you, to your family, because of things you're doing. But the stubbornness, here 250 people in front of their eyes, the earth opened and they went down. The only ones that were saved right before the earth opened was the Bnei Korach. That Korach had 3 sons, and they were with him. And just before, they said, you know something? We're wrong. And they separated from their father. And that's why we even have Parokim and Tillim, Lamanatseach Livnei Korach, that they did tshuva and they were saved. But what I want to tell you is that Klal Yisrael didn't take heed, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what we should do at this point? He said to Moshe Rabbeinu, tell every head of the Shevet, the Nasi of the Shevet, to take their staff, every one of them had a staff, and put it in the oil moyed in a circle, and the staff that stands up by itself and flourishes a flower, and then buds, and then gives out fruit. That's the Shevet. That's the one who Hashem wants to be, that lead Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. And they did that. And indeed, as we know, Aaron's staff flowered in the oil moed, and then they took it out. So says the Rashbam. The Rashbam says that the staff was taken out, and outside the oil moed, that it budded and the almonds, the fruit, came out. Why didn't it just happen says the Rashbam, inside everything in the oil moed, just like the flower came out? Let the other 2 things. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Klal Yisrael to see in front of their eyes that from a piece of stick out of the ground that was not attached to the ground, but a stick would bud and would give out fruit. So the Rashbam asks the question that, okay, you wanted it outside, some of the miracles, so that the people should see and learn and finally accept what has to happen. But why did they first put the staff into the oil moed? Once you wanted to show the people, stand in front of the people with the thing, put it in the circle, and let everybody watch the process. Why were they told that they have to put it into the oil moed in a circle, and then the flower came out, and then at that point, go outside to show the people? what happened. So the Rashbam answered, because everything that happens in this world has to begin with its roots and its foundation in a davar shebikdusha. If you want a malava malka to be successful, even in your home, I'm not talking about a yeshivish malava malka, in your home, your starting point is, I will have pushkas that everyone could put a coin and put the coins on a plate, that it should be readily available, so that everyone could pick up a coin and put it in. Begin with a davar shebikdusha. Make sure at some point somebody tells over a mice of tzaddikim or a dvar Torah that you have to sprinkle the atmosphere with ruchnias. And if you want them to leave and enjoy the food that they ate and enjoy the discussion, that cements the cementing factor for the event, any event. You begin and include Kedusha in it, and that is the cement that will fortify it and hold it together and produce the results that you would like to see. Now, Reb Moshe Feinstein asked a kasha on this, and he said, why does the pasuk say that they saw Mate Aaron blossomed and budded and gave out the fruit, and then the pasuk ends and says, Vayikhu ish matehu, that each one of the shvatim went and took his staff, his stick, and he went and took his staff back home. So he said the staffs of all the other shvatim were the losers. So what were they so proud to run to take their staff home? So said the Rosh Yeshiva, said Reb Moshe Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the Posek Hador, that the level of graciousness is enhanced when a person sometimes is wrong and he doesn't hide it and deny it. These Shiftei Kor took their staff back to show the Shevet that they lost, and now it's time for unity. And indeed, with the opening of the ground, there was still no unity. But when it came to this story, and they came back showing their loss of their staff, that it never blossomed and it never came out, that it encouraged unity of Klal Yisrael. Let's accept the results and let's move on. There are some people that were insulted 20 years ago and they're still crossing the street when they see the other person who insulted them. They crossed the street. They never were able to shake loose the anger, the envy, the bad feeling, all of these emotions that come into play when something happens. I mean, life is so short. What do they have to walk around half the day thinking about that person and what they did? And it's the first thing they bring up in conversation when they're going for a walk with a friend. Why? Bury the issue. Move on in life. Be positive. Think positive. And Reb Moshe gives an answer to the Rashbam's question of why the flower flourished first in the oil moed. And he said, because usually a flower after the budding, the next step takes place, the flower, the lapels, the actual flower disintegrates and starts to go off. And if it's a fruit tree, first the budding, then the fruit come out, and that's the main thing. Usually the almonds, it says shkedim, it was almonds. So the point being that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted them to see. It needed to begin the press in the oil moed, a davar shebekdusha, but then to go outside to see that the flower did not disintegrate, that the full flourish of the flower was part of the miracle, because usually a flower, then the leaves around the fruit start to fall off, and it didn't happen. We have to look around and be cognizant and aware of the beautiful items that take place in our life that are really nisim v'neflos, which we take for granted, unfortunately. If we fully appreciated, we would be dancing and laughing every day of our lives, because the level of appreciation would be so strong and forceful in our minds if we were able to just stop for that moment and rise above. Now, what happened was that they were told to take pans. Each one of these 250 people who died, they each took a pan, put ketoris on it, and then there was a fire that they ignited. And the same thing happened to Nadav and Avihu. But the difference was, by Nadav and Avihu, when they took the ketoris into the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, Pasuk says, Asher lo tziva, they were not told to do it. And that's why they paid with their lives. But over here, the ketoris was put on and it was lit. And right after these people fell into the ground, so Moshe HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, tell Elazar, or he spoke to Elazar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and tell him to take all the frying pans that remained, ki kodeshu, because they became hegdish, and they're burning, the ketoris, and put them on the mizbeach. Now, why should those frying pans, which were the vehicle of such a disaster that took place by the Kehillah at that time, be acceptable or even put on a mizbeach? So they answer and say, because it was commanded. And in Ki Kodeshu, it had a tremendous level of Kedusha, so it had to go up onto the mizbeach. But the question is, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, to do it? Why not just tell Aaron? Take the frying pans quickly and put them on the mizbeach. So the Meforshim say, and it's a very strong lesson to us in our lives, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the biggest Rachaman. Aaron HaKohen lost two sons for putting on frying pan, the ketoris, and going in, and they died. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have told Aaron to go take the frying pans, it was reminding him of what happened to his two sons when they took frying pans and went into the Kodesh Kodesh. So to avoid such sensitivity, to express and display such sensitivity, Aaron HaKohen was not asked to be involved at all in it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked Elazar. And we have to know that sometimes you see people go up, and talk about their children right in front of two women that never had any children. Is that the topic to bring up while you're sitting right in front of someone who was crying at every davening that they didn't have children, wanted children, and begged for children. So when we say things, and I always say to my teachers, there's 3 children in your class that the fathers died. You have to be careful when you go home to your tate. There's 3 kids there that was like a stab into them when they hear such a thing. So you have to just be cautious. We can't be perfect. We can't be totally correct, but we have to be at least aware and make ourselves aware to be sensitive to the difficulties and the shortcomings and the tragedies of the lives of so many that we are around, and how to express ourselves and how to deal with them.